Hades was family? Hades might be Ariel's family. That sounds fake until the family tree starts with one name, Triton. In The Little Mermaid, King Triton is Ariel's father. That is the Disney fact. He rules Atlantica, carries the trident, and sits at the center of Ariel's royal bloodline. But in Greek mythology, Triton is not just a sea king name. Triton is the son of Poseidon and Amphitrite. Poseidon is the brother of Zeus and Hades. That is the bridge, not proof, not canon, not Hades is definitely Ariel's uncle. Disney never confirms that its King Triton is the exact mythological Triton, and Hercules already changes Greek mythology whenever the story needs it. But Disney did choose the name Triton. It gave him the trident. It made him ruler of the sea. Then Hercules built an entire movie around Olympus, Zeus, and Hades. So if Disney's Triton borrows even part of the mythological bloodline, Ariel's world suddenly brushes against the same god family that powers Hercules. She stops feeling like a princess from a separate ocean story. She starts feeling like the seaborne edge of Disney's Olympus. It is not confirmed, but the names are real. The mythology is real. And Disney left the bloodline just open enough for fans to connect it. Gaston shot her? Gaston might have shot Bambi's mother. This is the wildest crossover theory here. That is why it sticks. Bambi never names the hunter. The movie turns him into something colder than a villain. He is man, a gunshot in the forest, a threat with no face. He destroys Bambi's childhood, then disappears before anyone can identify him. Years later, Beauty and the Beast gives Disney its most famous hunter. Gaston is not just a guy with a rifle. Hunting is his identity. His tavern is covered in trophies. His weapon is part of his image. He treats the wilderness like something built for him to dominate. That does not make the timeline clean. It does not prove Gaston walked into Bambi's forest, but as a dark Disney crossover theory, the picture clicks almost too fast. Bambi's mother is killed by an unnamed hunter. Gaston is Disney's named hunter with a rifle, animal trophies, and an entire song about how strong and unstoppable he is. The theory works because it gives an old fear a familiar face. Probably not canon. Still hard to unsee, because once Gaston steps into that forest in your head, the hunter is not faceless anymore. Hook killed her? Captain Hook might be the pirate behind Ariel's family tragedy. Not because Disney shows him. It does not. That blank space is the theory. In The Little Mermaid, Ariel's beginning, Queen Athena's death is tied to a pirate ship. Triton's hatred of humans comes from grief. A peaceful family moment turns into chaos at sea, and after Athena is gone, music disappears from Atlantica. The film gives the wound. Pirates, but not the pirate. Disney already has one pirate who dominates its animated memory more than anyone else. Captain Hook. That is why fans keep putting him near this story. Hook is theatrical, violent, sea-bound, and obsessed with control. He represents exactly the kind of human threat that would make Triton see the surface as dangerous forever. But the safety line matters. Hook is never shown in Ariel's beginning. The timeline is not clean enough to call this canon. The movie does not ask us to solve Athena's death like a mystery. It only leaves the culprit unnamed. And that is enough for the theory to breathe. Ariel's mother was lost because of pirates. Disney's most iconic pirate stands right beside that missing name. Not confirmed, but dangerously easy to blame. Rapunzel was family? Rapunzel might be closer to Elsa than a cameo. This one starts with a real frame. During Elsa's coronation in Frozen, the gates open, guests enter Arendelle, and Rapunzel and Eugene appear in the crowd. For most viewers, it is a cute Easter egg. Then the scene starts asking questions. Why are they there? A coronation is not a random street party. It is a royal event. Guests arrive because kingdoms have relationships, alliances, history, invitations. So if Rapunzel and Eugene are attending Elsa's coronation, Corona and Arendelle may be closer than the movie ever explains. Maybe allied kingdoms, maybe royal friends, maybe something family-shaped but never spoken out loud. The extreme version gets messy fast. The theory about Elsa and Anna's parents traveling for Rapunzel's wedding should not be treated as fact. The cleaner version is stronger. Cameo is real. The family connection is not confirmed, but the image still changes the scene. Rapunzel is not hidden in some random joke frame. She appears at Elsa's most important royal moment, inside the crowd that came to witness Arendelle reopen. Once you see her there, Frozen feels less isolated, like another Disney kingdom was standing in the room the whole time. Pudge did it? Lilo may have blamed one fish for the worst day of her life. That sounds ridiculous until you remember the sandwich. Every Thursday, Lilo brings Pudge a peanut butter sandwich. Not because it is cute, because she says Pudge controls the weather. At first it plays like a kid being strange. Lilo is late. Lilo is emotional. Lilo does things adults cannot decode. But Lilo and Stitch is not really about a weird kid. It is about grief. Lilo and Nani's parents are gone. Nani is trying to become a parent overnight. Lilo is trying to survive a loss she is too young to explain cleanly. That That is where the theory stops being funny. It is not that Pudge is magic. It is that Lilo may have built a ritual around the one thing she thinks could have changed everything. Feed the fish, control the weather, keep disaster away. Suddenly, the peanut butter sandwich is not random. It is a rule, a schedule, a tiny offering in a life that stopped making sense. Pudge did not need to cause anything for the theory to hurt. Lilo only needed to believe that maybe, somehow, he could have stopped the storm. Gothel was the queen? Mother Gothel might be the evil queen, not because Disney says it, because the pattern refuses to stay quiet. In Snow White, the evil queen is destroyed by beauty she cannot control. The mirror tells her Snow White is fairest, and that truth becomes an obsession. She uses magic, disguise, poison, and manipulation to remove the girl who threatens her power. Entangled, Gothel's fear is even more direct. She does not just envy youth, she steals it. The magic flower keeps her alive. Rapunzel carries that magic, so Gothel locks her away and turns love into a cage. Different story, same wound. A powerful older woman cannot survive the existence of a younger girl whose beauty or magic exposes what she is losing. Even the endings rhyme. The evil queen falls from a cliff. Gothel falls from the tower. One dies chasing Snow White. The other turns to dust after losing Rapunzel's stolen power. That does not prove they are the same person. For the theory to work literally, the queen's death would have to be less final than the film makes it look. But as a pattern theory, it has a spine. Mirror, magic, vanity, control. A young girl as a threat, a fall at the end. Maybe Gothel is not the queen. Maybe she is what the queen's fear looks like when Disney tells it again. Pedro was Casita? Abuelo Pedro might still be protecting the Madrigals, not as a ghost in the hallway, as the house. Encanto shows Pedro's sacrifice as the moment the miracle begins. Alma loses him at the river, the candle appears, mountains rise. The family receives shelter, gifts, and a living Casita that protects them for generations. The movie never says Pedro became Casita. That part matters. But emotionally, the theory lands because Casita behaves less like a building and more like a family member. It helps the children. It guides Mirabel. It moves tiles, drawers, doors, stairs, and shutters, like it is constantly watching over the people inside. Pedro's final act was protection. He stood between his family and danger. Casita spends the entire movie doing the same thing. That is the cleanest version of the theory. Not Pedro trapped in the walls, not a confirmed ghost house twist, a miracle shaped like his last wish. Keep them safe, give them a home, stay with them somehow. So when Casita collapses, it does not just feel like a magical housebreaking. It feels like the family losing Pedro all over again. And when the house returns, his protection feels like it never fully left. Gargoyles weren't real? The gargoyles might not be real. That makes the Hunchback of Notre Dame even sadder. Victor, Hugo, and Laverne enter the movie as comic relief. They talk to Quasimodo. They sing with him. They push him toward the outside world when fear keeps him trapped above the city. As a kid, you accept it. It is Disney. Stone can talk. But look at Quasimodo's life. He is isolated in the bell tower. Frollo controls what he believes. The outside world is something he watches, but barely touches. The gargoyles are the only friends who are always there, always listening, always telling him what he needs to hear. That is where the theory begins. Maybe they are not living statues. Maybe Quasimodo's mind turned stone into companionship because total loneliness would be unbearable without it. The film complicates this. In the finale, the gargoyles appear to affect the physical world, so the theory cannot be stated as simple fact, but the safer reading is stronger. Maybe Disney is showing Quasimodo's inner life through musical fantasy. Maybe the gargoyles are real to him because he needed them to be. Suddenly, the funniest characters in the movie are not just jokes. They are what loneliness sounds like when it tries to keep someone alive.